Dreamers can't be tamed.
As time went on.
So I remember Rancis telling me the story, and he told me that when he first met you, you were young. How old were you?
I was 20.
20. So I think you were 20 years old, and he said like you were stiff as a rock, you couldn't move. But he showed the picture of you and how you look bloated, and I think this is the reason why we're getting into this conversation today is your journey through nutrition and like the mindset aspect of it that it brought with you. So where did you start learning about eating, and where did you come from in terms of eating?
So yeah, that picture, he actually showed all of us what Moses is talking about, again, that's early stages of fitness, learning about nutrition. But we don't really think about this so much, how important nutrition is, right? Just as athletes, we're like, oh, because I work out or I train, I can eat whatever I want. But that's
Complete bullshit.
It's complete bullshit. There is no such thing as out training a bad diet or out working out a bad diet. And kind of like understanding that over the years of the first program that Rancis and I got into was called Precision Nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of opened the door for us in terms of understanding how important nutrition was for athletes. And I think that was the first time where it was kind of like a spark that, yeah, you can train as hard as you want, but if you're not eating the right type of things, you're actually not really doing much for yourself internally.
And what was the point that like you learned that nutrition was that important? Was it after Precision Nutrition?
It was actually, so like, again, I said like Precision Nutrition opened the door. So it was like, we were young, so it was just understanding, so if we're training, that this is the way you need to eat. So if you train, you need X amount of macros, micros, and all that. But it was more of like individual research that I did on my end, and kind of coming across a few things with different avenues through YouTube, right? Because YouTube is very powerful now. You could probably learn more 1 hour sitting on YouTube than your doctor can tell you or give you good advice about. So for me, this was like months on. So I was in front of YouTube for months on understanding what the proper nutrition was that actually probably help us on a cellular level, as opposed to just kind of staying up to that macronutrients, carbs, protein, and all that.
So you shifted now, and so something you guys need to know about Aman, and I think I told Aman, I was like, you should eat a raw liver on IG so that everybody can see it, and he's actually done it. You've been diving into a lot more of the carnivore diet and fasting. Why those things?
All right, so this is the carnivore diet actually is what I would say is like a precursor to the keto diet, and that's what I started looking into first. And a lot of it had to do with my research into diabetes and what causes that, right? And the more I got into understanding how diabetes is caused and why that is now it's basically an upheaval in our country.
Mm-hmm.
I started looking into diabetes first, and then that kind of led me to understanding what carbohydrates were doing to people, especially the processed carbohydrates. And we go into a grocery store, 95% of the food there is refined sugars.
Yeah.
It's going to raise your insulin to some crazy level. So it started from that. It started from understanding carbohydrates, especially simple carbohydrates, for what they are and what they do to us. And then in turn, I went into keto and understanding to control those levels. And I think keto, it's like 50 grams. You're allowed 50 grams of complex carbohydrates, like sweet potatoes, avocados, banana here and there, But then from there, going deeper into the research, I started seeing that meat and saturated fat, how that affects us on a cellular level, and how much better that is on its own,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to putting in carbohydrates and things like that.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I was listening to Aubrey Marcus's book, Own Your Day, right? And he started talking about, he said one line, if you're not eating fats, you're probably fat, right? And it's because when we eat certain foods, 95% of all foods have glycogen in it.
Mm-hmm.
So even when the fat cell breaks down, right, and we put ourselves into ketosis, right, in that fat cell, there's glycogen, which the liver converts to glucose,
Yep.
which that means that we're able to get glucose, no matter what, the body's going to produce glucose at some point. It's the amount of glucose that we're actually taking in.
Yeah.
So then I want to get your perspective on why fasting has become such a big part of your diet now, more so, and why you've decided to do the 7-day fast with me. We're going to do it together. What led you to that decision? What's the reasoning behind it?
Okay, so the decision with fasting is nothing so much to do with being keto or being carnivore. It's nothing new either. Fasting has been around for thousands of years. We as humans, we would not have evolved, and we would not have survived if we weren't in times of feast and famine, right? Mm-hmm. So we would go long durations, 2, 3, 4 days, even weeks without eating if food was the availability for food was scarce. So that understanding, I know this was through personal research. I came across a few things with people fasting and kind of improving their health on a very, very deep level. So I started looking into this doctor. His name is Dr. Jason Fung. He's from Canada. He's a diabetes. He works with patients with kidney failure or kidney disease, but now he's transitioned into working with more diabetics. And just understanding what his concepts were behind fasting, and how some of our fears, like people might think that you're losing muscle, or you're going to lose, mm-hmm. you're going to starve to death. Fasting is not starving at all. It's far from it. It really, really heals you on a cellular level.
Yeah, so Dr. Fung actually has a website where he talks about this, because in the Bite by Bite program here in Vita Project, we introduce fasting in later on in the program, and it's the concept of autophagy.
Yeah.
Right. Autophagy is basically what your body does to get rid of all the bad cells, all the pathogens in your body. So the reason that Aman and I are going into the fast, one of the reasons is for the benefits of autophagy. We're going to literally clean out our gut. We're going to clean out our cells. We're going to make better efficient cells by getting rid of the cells with bad mitochondria. Something that we talk about a lot is the mitochondria, and Dr. Fung actually talks about it a lot. Why the mitochondria is so important. The mitochondria is the energy source for each cell. Mm-hmm. And if those mitochondria are not working efficiently or properly, you're not going to work efficiently or properly, right? So what fasting actually does is, through autophagy, get rid of the cells with the bad mitochondria and actually keep the cells with the more efficient mitochondria, which will actually improve your energy levels, improve your health, improve your skin, improve your body odor, all the benefits. You're going to lose weight. You're going to see more lean muscle. You actually introduced and promote the trigger of the growth hormone that's in the brain. So there are a lot of benefits that we're doing that. At least for me, the reason that I want to do a 7-day fast is for the mindset.
Yes.
Because there's this spiritual component to it that allows you to elevate to another level. At least for me, when I went through the 5-day fast, that was one hell of a ride.
Yeah, even if so we're so used to eating 3 meals on our culture in our 21st century. Skipping a meal is like people just go crazy. Oh, you're telling me to skip a meal? So this is going to be something really crazy for someone to jump into, just because if you're eating 3 meals a day, just skipping 1 meal is completely out of the ordinary. But you have to work up to it slowly, right? So again, you might skip a meal here, and then you might skip another meal, and you probably only do 1 meal a day. And that's how you actually work up to it. So it's nothing that you would ever want to just throw yourself into, saying, oh, I'm going to do a 7-day fast right away, or I'm going to do a 24-hour fast even right away.
You would have to have one hell of a mindset to do that. Because the way I started is like, I told you a little bit, I was like, well, I started doing intermittent fasting. And my dad told me about fasting a long time ago, right? Because he was looking into Dr. Fung and the other guy, Tom. What's his name? White dude, big dude. I think you introduced me to him too. He talks about fasting too as well. And if you guys want to learn more about fasting, there's a great app, the Zero app.
Zero app, yep.
Yes, Tom is on that.
Yeah,
on that app. He's on that app. So my dad told me this about, years ago. He's like, you should fast. Fasting is really good for you. He couldn't explain the why, the science behind it, right? And it wasn't until now, as I really developed the skill of fasting, that I started to learn more about it. But I started with intermittent. So basically I would skip a meal, and then I would do 12 hours or 16 hours without eating, 18 hours. Then I tried 24 hours. When I felt that I was good with 24 hours, I then tried to do 36, then 48. And then when I attempted the 5-day fast, I did it in a fashion where I did 24, break a meal, OMAD, right? One meal, then another 48, and then another 48, OMAD, another 48. And I would just scale that up. And then during the quarantine was the first time that I did the 5-day fast. But for me, like I told you before, I'm curious to see how I'm going to react this time, because in the quarantine, I told you I was eating like shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know what effects the sugars might have, what effects the sugars had during that time versus now, where I'm eating mostly fats, mostly proteins.
So this is something me and Moses talk about a lot, right? The whole idea of ghrelin and how sugar affects ghrelin. Again, in Moses's experience with the 5-day fast, and him saying that he was having like basically pizza before he went into the 5-day fast. What actually is going on is his body is getting rid of all the sugar, which in turn is affecting his ghrelin hormone, which is the hormone that tells you when you're hungry and when you're full. That's leptin. So ghrelin tells you when you're hungry, and leptin tells you when you're full. And I think that's what was happening with Moses, because I've had similar experiences where if I'm on a very high carbohydrate or sugar diet and I try to go into like a 24-hour fast or even a 16-hour fast, I'm like ravenously looking for food, because it's just much harder to do a fast coming straight off of sugar as opposed to protein and fats.
Yeah, I think so too. Like the nervous system, just the way we train the nervous system to work out and lift weights, right? Or run. It's the same concept with food. If you're training the nervous system to use sugars as a fuel, the main fuel source, when you try to get off sugars, it's gonna suck. Like, plain and simple, you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to become healthier. The first and foremost thing that you're gonna have to do is get rid of sugars. I believe that fasting is one of the ways to really go into that. Now, it's gonna suck. Like, there's no way around it. It's gonna suck. You can go into a diet plan, like for example, our Bite by Bite program kind of scaffolds clients off of that glucose into a more fat-based, more protein-based, vegetable-based diet. But I think when you go directly into fasting, it's the mindset. When I did the 5-day fast, it was because I felt like I was getting addicted to sugar again. So even that on the microbial level in the stomach, right? Those bacteria are releasing dopamine and serotonin based on the foods that I eat. So if I'm eating pizza and sugar over time, I'm just creating more bacteria that wants those things. So I think when you stop yourself and you create the discipline to just stop eating, one is you get rid of the microbials that are in there. And two, you develop the discipline and mindset to start taking yourself completely off sugar. It's like someone smoking a cigarette and going cold turkey versus someone who goes from a cigarette to an e-cigarette to weed to whatever and just tries to progressively get off it.
Exactly what Moses is saying, because our body, we get so used to certain foods giving us that trigger that we tend to want to constantly repeat our actions, and we seek that dopamine serotonin effect in our brain. And I feel like this is where fasting comes, is more powerful than anything, even dieting to lose weight or to lower your blood sugar, because you go cold turkey. There's nothing that can possibly raise your insulin afterwards, or even your dopamine and serotonin levels. And the whole idea of like abstaining for food for that long, what ends up happening is you reset those preferences, and also you have more control of your choices. And I think that's really the biggest reason why Moses and I are both doing is to build that discipline, let our body heal itself, cleanse itself, because it's a very powerful machine. It knows exactly what it needs to do to clean itself. It just needs time. It needs time and space. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to give it some time and space, cleanse itself, and then we're going to build new microbes that can get used to the healthier foods and get pleasure from eating the healthier foods.
Yeah, tasting the palate, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. So we're gonna go into the 7-day fast. I've been preparing by eating a lot of fats, trying to build muscle, so heavy strength training. I know you're doing the same. So one of the misconceptions during fasting is that people lose muscle, right? And to a certain extent, it is true if you're not taking the right measures to maintain that muscle. So what are your thoughts on that?
All right, so I saw something once where someone said, if you're fasting, why would your body get rid of the one thing it might need to actually go find food afterwards?
Exactly.
Right? So your body's not that stupid. It's not gonna take away your muscle, the one thing you actually might need to go, let's say, to the store or to climb a tree to get a food or something like that. It does affect it to some degree, but it's very, very minimal. It's almost there's so much stuff that leaves your body before your muscle actually starts breaking down. There might be water that's in the muscle. It might be the glycogen stores that are in the muscle. But you losing muscle or excessive amount of muscle, that does not happen during the fast.
Well, what we're planning to do to maintain our muscle is to lift heavy and slow. We're not going to do any type of anaerobic exercises that require us a lot of energy sources, meaning when we talk about anaerobic exercises, we're talking about using fat as a fuel source to be able to push through a workout, meaning that you're breathing heavy, you're breathing hard, and you're not taking in a lot of oxygen. We're going to do slow, heavy lifts, very minimal reps, and a lot of walking to maintain that muscle mass.
Cold showers also.
Cold showers to maintain that muscle mass. And basically a lot of breathing and meditating because it's more of a mindset. What are you expecting for yourself the first 24 to 72 hours?
All right, so I know Moses mentioned that me and him have been preparing a little bit differently. I've seen Moses, he's really trying to load up on all the micronutrients and everything because that's his way of preparing, and that's how he's going to experience it through his preparation and see how it goes when it comes to maintaining muscle mass. The way I've been doing it, I'm still sticking to a strict carnivore diet. I usually eat one meal a day, so I only eat dinner. That's what I do, and it's primarily what it is. It's carnivore, heavy-based fats, and a lot of meat. Sometimes what I do during the day, which I literally just did right now before I walked in here, is I had liver pills.
Okay.
And that's liver, I don't know if you guys know, I know Moses joked around in the beginning of the podcast about me eating liver. I actually take liver pills because I don't enjoy eating liver. So I take liver pills. I take about 6, which gives me about like half a serving of ounce of liver. But I don't know if you guys know, but liver is actually one of the most nutritious, dense foods on the planet. So it could be cow liver, chicken liver, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's one of the most nutrition dense foods. So that's how I'm getting my nutrients in before we go into this. That's my preparation. What I'm expecting is it's gonna suck. Even though me and Moses are taking the right steps to prepare for this, I can almost guarantee that the first, I would say, 2-3 days are gonna be the toughest.
Yeah.
And this is from experience also, because Moses, again, he says he's done a 5-day fast. I've done a 72-hour fast. For me, the second day was the toughest. The third day was a breeze. And then I broke my fast. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. But I'm really hoping that around like the third or fourth day, we have more energy and we're able to kind of pick up a little bit more intensity on our workouts.
Yeah, so I'm expecting that the first day will be the hardest. I think the first 24 hours of the fast is probably the hardest. You're looking at, damn, I got 6 days left.
Yeah.
You're thinking about that aspect. I think between 36 and 72 will be our peak to be able to get our best workouts in. I think after 72 is when we actually start to feel the effects of the fast. So I know, and this is based off my previous experience, I don't know, maybe day 4, day 5 may be a little bit better. But when I was heading into day 4 and day 5, I was basically taking like 4 naps a day. And I was like, I was just out. I know that I would get up, get lightheaded, almost faint and stuff like that. And this is why it's very important to really understand your body and kind of progressively load yourself into fasting. Don't pass out. Fasting. Progressively load yourself into fasting and really get a sense of how you feel when you do go into a fast. For me, when I went into that 5-day fast, I was in quarantine, so I wasn't working. I was basically here, recording content and just basically doing a little bit of work. I know that I've experienced very clear thinking during a fast, So for me, it's because now you're utilizing fat as the fuel source, and fat is just a way more cleaner, more efficient fuel source for the body to burn. So that's what I'm expecting. I don't know what's going to happen during the 7-day fast.
I know during this podcast, you and I mentioned fat a lot, right? And I think the issue with that is people have a definition of fat, because when we grow up, we're, this person is fat, or this person is fat, you're fat, you're holding fat and you're just overweight or you're obese. But that's not what the definition that me and Moses are talking about when we talk about fat in terms of like consumption of fat, right? So we all have fat, even myself and Moses. We're thin, we train, but our body still holds fat as a safeguard for us for moments like this where we would go a long time without food, and it'll be able to tap into that energy source using fat as a primary fuel. Another thing is the body actually wants to use that. That's another thing, right? This is why diets like keto and carnivore became so popular, because people were able to follow these eating plans and still have their body on a ketosis level, where they're able to use fat as their primary fuel source and not just glucose. So
the story behind fat, right? I read it today in Aubrey Marcus's book, and they were basically 2 gentlemen, 2 scientists, one that advocated for the consumption of saturated fats, and one that advocated for the consumption of glucose. And because people associated, you being fat comes from eating too much fat, then that's the link and the connotation we added to the idea of consuming a high-fat diet, which is not true. What you're actually doing by consuming a high-fat diet is that you are training the nervous system to use fat as a fuel source, as opposed to glucose. When you take in too much glucose, your body has no idea what to do with the excess glucose, right? So what does the liver do? The liver starts to produce insulin, and that insulin converts it to fat, because the liver doesn't know what to do with the excess glucose. Because in every fat cell, there is glycogen, and glycogen, when it gets broken down, gets turned into glucose. And I think people have a misconception, because the nutrition information out there that's in the world right now is all over the place. And there's no right diet, there's no, carnivore is not the best, keto is not the best, right? It's really what works for you, because you're gonna be different. And I think fasting is one of the ways to really explore something that may work for you. We know that fasting is in religions. We know that fasting is in, medical practices. We know that fasting is in, spiritual, like the Buddhists, the monks practice fasting. It's across the board one of the ways to literally level yourself up into a more efficient human being.
Yep, I actually read that this morning in the book that I'm reading by Dr. Jason Fung and Jim Moore. It's called The Complete Guide to Fasting, and he talks about the whole Buddhist philosophy of fasting for, I think what Buddhists do a year, they do like 2 weeks. That's their longest fast, and that's a lot to, again, that whole idea of not having anything, to build the mental capacity to detach from these pleasures, things that give us pleasure, and that's kind of like what they do spiritually to feel connected to themselves.
Yeah, I think that point that you brought up about detachment is really powerful, especially for Americans, because we think about our lifestyle, and even though we might be considered, some of us in the world might be considered poor here, right? If we go to another part of the world, a third world country, we're still richer than like 75% of the rest of the world, right? So this idea that we're attached to all of these material things, all of the foods, fasting is just another way to start that process of detaching. Because if you can detach from the material things, from the food, essentially what happens at this point is that your ego starts to lose its identity of who it is, right? And that's a bigger concept. And I think for me now, it's more going into that space of like, all right, it's time to practice detaching again. It's time to practice like creating a newer version, a better version of my ego, so that I can become, more powerful. I can become, a better leader, a better brother, a better son, whatever the case might be.
And again, I love what Moses said there, because detaching, right? Detaching can mean for multiple things. Let's say if you want to detach from all social media or your phone for a week, when you get back to it, you start to realize the mental clarity that you have, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why with food it's so powerful, you are what you eat. So the reason why with food it's so powerful is it's in our country, in our culture now, it's so readily available. Everywhere you go, you can drive down any town, you're gonna see a food store, a clothing store, and then 2 other food stores, or 3 other restaurants, and then it's consistently triggering us to want to consume something. So I feel like this is so powerful more than anything in terms of taking something out of your life, that this really just hits a lot of areas in your brain.
Yeah. So let them know, what do you think happens to us in the 7-day fast? Where do we start to die? Where do they get to see us suffer? What day? I'll let them know mine, and then we'll tell them about next week.
Okay, so honestly, I've been watching Moses, and me and him have been reading a lot, and I've been kind of doing certain things to get ready for it. I do believe that the second and the third day will be the toughest for us. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that from the 4th and all the way to the 7th day, we should be fine. Mm-hmm. And this is, again, because all the reading I've been doing with in relation to fasting, there's people that never even prepared, mm-hmm. and they had a decent diet and they jumped right into this and they still did relatively well.
Yeah. So I think we'll make the 7-day fast. I think we'll feel like it's going to be very difficult and like we want to quit day 4. Day 4 and day 5, I think, will be the hardest. Mm. I think after that point, the urge to want to eat kind of goes away. Yeah. I think it's more so like the suck that you're going to feel. I think day 6 and day 7, it's really just about really meditating and, keep moving, keep walking. So that's what I'm going to perceive. I feel the first day is going to be the hardest. I think days 2 to 4 will probably be the greatest in the middle. And then I think the end will just be like, what are you going to break your fast with?
Oh my God. So I'm going to take Moses' advice, and he advised me that I should start off with fats and work into it. So probably the first thing I'll have is be a spoon of almond butter and a spoon of ghee, clarified butter. And I think from there I'll start working more into drinking like probably some type of green shake or something like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very important that we don't consume a lot of fiber and put a lot of stress on the stomach. And you definitely don't want to break a fast with refined sugars. No. You would throw all the benefits that you had from that fast out of the window. Yep. It'd be fucking stupid. So for me, I'm probably gonna, like I did last time, I broke it with a handful of walnuts, right, which had a little bit of fiber, and I broke it with 2 eggs, and that's it. I was full after that. So I'm thinking this time I'm probably going to do something a little bit lighter, probably some almond butter, break it with some almond butter, and that's probably it. Because when you start eating again, starting up the digestive system, I know that I felt like shit for the next 2 days. But then after that, I felt amazing.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.